If I had gone out 5 minutes later, she would have died, right under my nose. It all started with a strange sound echoing from the forest. I was standing by the shed when I heard something like a muffled growl mixed with a raspy wheeze. At first, I thought it might be a fox or an injured dog. But then I noticed a dark stain on the rocks near the cliff's edge. Red. Fresh. My chest tightened. I leaned over, and that's when I heard it again. A rasp, barely audible, like the last breath of something fading. I squinted down the cliff and saw something tawny, broken, twisted like a discarded rag. But it was a lynx. A big one, her fur matted and torn, her chest rising ever so faintly. She had fallen, and she was alive. Still alive. I didn't know for how long. Time froze. In moments like that, your mind screams either run or help. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding, thinking, this is dangerous. This is a wild animal. She might die, or worse, attack. But the rasp came again, and I moved. I circled the cliff through the underbrush, slipping on damp soil and catching myself on branches. My breath was short, not from exertion but from fear. But I couldn't walk away. I descended carefully, and as I drew closer, I saw her eyes for the first time, half-lidded, clouded, but alive. She didn't growl, didn't move, just breathed. Barely. Up close, it was worse. Gashes on her legs, torn flesh along her side. One leg bent at a sickening angle. Blood clung to her fur, soaked into the dirt. I hadn't meant to become a rescuer, but I couldn't walk away now. She was dying, and I was the only one who knew. I slid my jacket under her, lifting her like I would a newborn calf, careful not to jostle her broken frame. She didn't resist. Her breath was labored, heavy. As I carried her uphill, I stopped several times, unsure if I'd make it. But every wheeze, every flicker of breath reminded me. She was still fighting. I didn't have a cage. No vet tools. Just an old barn, a few rolls of bandage, and some boiled water. And stubbornness. I laid her on a bed of hay. Her sides rose and fell like slow waves, barely stirring. Water, bandages, scissors. My hands shook. My heart hammered. I wasn't a vet. I was a farmer. But the gash on her side was deep. Maybe broken ribs. I cleaned it as best I could, pulling out a twig lodged between two ribs. She twitched, a sharp spasm, but didn't cry out. I wrapped her side in gauze before my own knees gave out. I stayed with her until night. My head buzzed. The barn reeked of sweat, blood, and old hay. She didn't move, but she breathed. And somewhere deep inside, a new fear rooted itself. If she survived, what then? And if she didn't, could I handle that? But when I saw her ear twitch the next morning, I smiled. She was still holding on. And so was I. On the third day, she tried to lift her head for the first time. Her paw was still motionless, but her eyes were clearer. I slid the bowl of water closer, and slowly, hesitantly, she took a sip. It felt like a victory. A quiet one, like the first patch of thawed earth after a long winter. I still didn't understand how she had fallen. The cliff was steep, the forest dense, and lynxes usually avoid such dangerous terrain. It didn't add up. So I went back to the place where I had first heard her. That's when I saw something that made me freeze. Footprints. Human. Clear and fresh. One print deeper, as if someone had stood there, hesitating. They led straight to the cliff's edge, and then stopped. No return prints. Just a void. I looked at the nearby trees. One had a fresh scratch, like from a metal object. Had someone pushed her? Bent a branch to lure her? A cold feeling crept down my spine. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been here. And something had happened. I'm not one to poke my nose into trouble, but the lynx was lying in my barn, alive because of me. And now, whatever touched her life had reached into mine. That afternoon, my nephew Terrace stopped by. He often came after school to help with chores or just chat. I hadn't planned on telling him about the lynx, but he heard rustling in the barn and peeked in. Is that a real lynx? Found her. Fell from the cliff. Alive, barely. He stood there, eyes wide. She's scared, I said. Keep your voice low. He nodded and crouched quietly a few feet away. We both sat in silence, watching her breathe, slow and steady. She didn't flinch anymore when I entered. She was getting used to me. She didn't even react when Terrace stepped closer. Later, outside, he came up to me. I saw some people in the woods, he said. Two of them. One in dark clothes, the other had a backpack. Standing near the path, then went deeper into the forest. Yesterday, just before sunset. I thought they were mushroom pickers, but it's not the season. Coincidence? Maybe. But my mind was already building a chain. The lynx, the fall, the footprints, the strangers. I couldn't trust guesses. I had to know. The next morning, I grabbed my binoculars and headed back to the spot where I'd seen the prints. The weather was turning, drizzle in the air, clouds rolling in. But the wet ground still held impressions. Deeper in, I found another print. The sole pattern looked like tactical boots. Nearby, a cigarette butt. Not hunters. Not locals. I knew everyone around here. These were outsiders. When I returned home, she was sitting upright, leaning on her good paw. Her eyes, no longer cloudy, but alert. She didn't hiss or look away. Instead, she watched me, studied me. I placed a piece of boiled meat near her. She didn't move at first. Only after several long minutes did she lean forward and take it. Gently, like a wild animal choosing, for the first time, to trust. That hit me harder than anything. Her body still ached, but she made a choice. To trust me. Meanwhile, something else was growing in me too. There was something in those woods, and it hadn't gone away. It started with the lynx. Sometime past midnight, I woke to a low, guttural growl. At first, I thought I dreamed it, but then I heard it again, faint but clear. A warning. I threw on my coat and boots, grabbed the flashlight, and stepped into the yard. The night was damp. Clouds smothered the stars, and everything was cloaked in a thick stillness. But the barn, it wasn't quiet. The sound came again from inside. Not the lynx. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. I froze. Then came a metallic creak. The latch. Someone was trying to open the barn door. My shotgun was by the kitchen door. I bolted back inside, heart slamming against my ribs, yanked it from the hooks, loaded it on instinct. Whoever it was, if they were brave enough to come onto my land in the middle of the night, they weren't here by mistake. Back outside, I circled behind the barn, keeping low. I could see the faint beam of a flashlight slicing through the slats. Inside, the lynx let out another growl, louder this time. Angry. I stepped out from the shadows, shotgun raised. Get away from there. The light snapped off. I heard scrambling, quick, clumsy footsteps fading into the trees. I didn't shoot. Couldn't. Not in the dark. I flung open the barn door. The lynx was pressed against the far wall, eyes wide, her breathing fast. She had sensed it before I had. Whatever instincts lived inside her, they hadn't dulled. I lowered the gun. It's okay now, I murmured. They're gone. But I knew this wasn't over. In the morning, I checked the area. Boot prints. Heavy. Deep. Not mine, not Tara's. Not from last night's rain either. These were fresh. Someone had come prepared. All day, I couldn't settle. I walked the fence line 3 times. Every creak of the gate made me look over my shoulder. Even the animals sensed something. My dog wouldn't leave my side, ears twitching at every sound. By late afternoon, I made a decision. I packed some food, water, my knife, and binoculars, left the lynx with a full bowl, and locked the barn tight. Then I went into the forest. I followed the ridge past the cliff and deeper than I'd gone in years. The terrain grew wild, twisted roots, moss-covered stones, and shadows that lingered even in daylight. And then I found it. A trap. Not an ordinary one. This was expertly hidden, built with metal jaws big enough to catch a deer or a lynx. Around it, blood stained the leaves, and tufts of fur clung to the brush. The earth was torn from struggle. Whatever had been caught there fought hard. And it wasn't the only one. To the side, a broken branch. More fur. Smaller. Grayish. Not just one lynx. I stood there, the forest pressing in on me, the silence thick. This wasn't hunting. This was something colder. Crueler. Illegal. Someone was trapping lynxes. Maybe for fur. Maybe for trade. Maybe worse. And now one of them, mine, was in my barn. My breath caught. My barn. They knew. They came for her. I backed away slowly, then turned and made my way home, moving fast but quiet. Every branch snap behind me made my skin crawl. I didn't stop until I saw the roof of my house through the trees. The barn was still locked. The lynx was still there, watching me. This wasn't about just saving a wild animal anymore. This was war. The day after I found the trap, I started asking questions. I called a neighbor down the road, old Mikola, who kept goats near the edge of the forest. He'd lived there longer than anyone else, and if something strange was happening, he'd have noticed. Have you lost any animals lately? I asked, trying to sound casual, though the tension in my voice probably gave me away. He hesitated. One of my younger goats vanished a few weeks ago. Figured it was a wolf or maybe poachers. What? I told him I'd seen some signs. Left it vague. But that got me thinking. Over the next 2 days, I spoke to 5 more farmers in the area. 3 had stories. A missing dog. 2 sheep gone without a trace. A cow found dead in the woods, half-eaten but without a clear predator trail. In each case, the pattern was the same. No blood, no tracks, no struggle. Just absence. It didn't sit right with me. That wasn't normal. And it wasn't wolves. So I called someone who might know better. Ivan was a retired forest ranger. He'd walked every inch of this region before they phased out the local patrols. We hadn't spoken in years, but he remembered me. "You still keeping chickens?" "Not much left of them these days," I said. "But that's not why I'm calling. I think someone's been setting traps out here. Big ones. And not for deer." He went quiet. "You're not the first to say that," he finally replied. "Last fall, I saw some guys with night vision scopes near the ridge. They weren't locals. Had that look, tight-lipped, too clean, like they didn't belong in the mud." I told him about the lynx, about the barn, about the man who tried to break in. I described the way she looked when I found her, the wounds that didn't line up with a simple fall. "You need to be careful," Ivan said. "If they're trapping protected animals, they won't stop at fences or doors. I've seen this before, back in the day. Illegal fur traders, organ dealers, even. They vanish fast." I asked if he'd seen anyone near the old hunting lodge past the river. "It used to be abandoned, but maybe someone had reclaimed it." "No, but I've heard rumors. Someone bought the land a year ago. Not from here. A group, maybe a shell company. They keep to themselves. Locals avoid the area now. Even the deer paths have shifted." That gave me a direction. I didn't plan on confronting anyone yet. I just needed eyes. So I asked Terrace to stay away for a while. He didn't like that, but he understood. I could see the worry in his eyes. He'd grown attached to the lynx, in his own quiet way. It wasn't just about the animal anymore. It was about something bigger. We all felt it. Then I went to town. The vet clinic was small, more for cows and sheep than anything exotic. But they knew me. I asked for Oksana. She was younger than I remembered. Maybe 30, with tired eyes and a way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. She moved with quiet confidence, the kind that comes from long nights and hard lessons. When I explained what I was dealing with, carefully, leaving out the worst, she nodded slowly. "A lynx? That's unusual. She's healing, but I'm out of my depth. And there's something bigger going on." She didn't hesitate. "Take me there." We drove in silence most of the way. I could tell she was thinking, planning. Her gaze rarely left the passing trees. She wasn't afraid, but she was alert. She understood the unspoken parts of my story. When she saw the lynx, she knelt gently, kept her hands low. The barn was quiet. Dust danced in the shafts of light from the high window. "She trusts you," she said. "That's rare." The lynx didn't flinch, didn't growl, just watched her, curious, as if sensing she wasn't a threat. It struck me how different the animal was now. No longer broken, but not fully wild again either. Somewhere in between. Oksana examined her quickly, careful, professional. Her hands moved with practiced ease, and she murmured soft reassurances as she worked. I could tell she'd done this 1,000 times, but never quite like this. The wound's healing well. She'll walk again, maybe even hunt. But she shouldn't stay here forever. I nodded. "I know." As she packed her kit, she paused. "If you think someone's coming after her, we need to move fast. They won't wait forever." I looked out toward the woods. The shadows between the trees felt heavier now. Closer, like they were leaning in. "They're already here," I said. That night, I sat with the lynx longer than usual. She lay curled in the straw, eyes half closed, but alert. I could feel her watching me, the same way I was watching her. There was a weight in the air, like the forest was holding its breath. Outside, the wind had picked up. Branches scratched the side of the barn. I checked the locks twice, then once more for good measure. I didn't sleep much. My mind kept replaying Ivan's words. The reports from neighbors. The trap. The blood. The SUV. Everything pointed to something organized, something dangerous. And now I was in the middle of it. But I wasn't alone anymore. Oksana had seen enough to believe me. Ivan was watching from his hill. Even Taras, though young, had a fire in him that reminded me of myself years ago. And the lynx, she wasn't just a wounded animal. She was a survivor. A fighter. The forest had changed. But maybe it wasn't too late to change it back. Maybe the silence could be broken. Maybe the shadows didn't get the last word. She was ready. After weeks of careful healing, the lynx stood on all four paws, wobbly at first, then stronger each day. The scar along her side had closed, and her eyes burned with something wild again. Hunger, awareness, instinct. Every movement she made now carried purpose. She stretched often, tested her balance, even paced slowly in the barn when she thought no one was watching. Oksana came by more often now. She brought supplies, checked the wound, stayed a bit longer each time. The lynx didn't growl anymore when she entered. They'd come to an understanding. Oksana would sometimes sit nearby, murmuring in that calm tone of hers, while the lynx blinked slowly, half asleep, half listening. A fragile peace hung in that barn, like the silence before a storm. But time was running out. We both knew it. Every night, I triple-checked the locks. Every crack in the forest made me freeze. The men hadn't returned, but it didn't mean they'd given up. I slept with my shotgun nearby. Even my dog, usually lazy and slow, stayed alert, growling at the barn door once or twice when nothing seemed to be there. "She can't stay here," Oksana said one morning, arms folded. "You've done more than anyone could. But if they come again," I nodded. "We take her to the sanctuary." It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the best we had. A wildlife center up north, behind fences and watchtowers, with people who knew how to protect creatures like her. I called ahead. They were ready, and they understood the urgency. They didn't ask many questions, which, frankly, was a relief. I hated the idea of driving her away, but I hated more the thought of waking up to find her gone, or worse. I had grown used to her presence, her quiet breathing in the dark, her amber eyes flicking open when I entered with food. There was a rhythm now, a routine. Letting her go would break that, but holding on could mean her death. We planned to leave at dawn. I built a crate big enough for her to move, but small enough to keep her safe during transport. I lined it with old blankets and hay. She didn't like it, but after some coaxing and a calm word from Oksana, she stepped inside. It wasn't submission. It was trust. That look in her eyes said, "I don't like this, but I choose to believe you." The road was quiet. Mist hung low over the fields, and the trees blurred past the windshield. I kept checking the rear view, not just for her, but for anything following. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight it ached. We were halfway there when it happened. A black SUV appeared behind us. No plates, just headlights and a cold presence that made my grip tighten on the wheel. Oksana saw it too. She didn't speak, just glanced at me with a question in her eyes. "They're not passing," she finally said. I turned off onto a side road, narrow, winding. The SUV followed. The engine roared behind us. Closer. No honk. No lights to flash a warning. Just silent pursuit. "Get ready to run," I muttered. We didn't make it far. A fallen tree blocked the path up ahead. It wasn't natural. Someone had dragged it across the road. The SUV stopped behind us. Doors opened. 3 men. One carried a rifle. The others spread out, methodical. They weren't in a rush. That made it worse. Oksana reached for her phone. No signal. "Stay in the truck," I said, voice low. I could see her fingers tighten around the phone anyway. She wasn't the type to just sit and watch. I stepped out, shotgun in hand, not raised but visible. The man with the rifle grinned, as if this was some private joke. "Hand over the crate," he said. "You're trespassing. Get off my land." "This isn't your land anymore," he replied, stepping forward. There was confidence in his voice, the kind that comes from knowing no one is watching. He took another step. That's when it happened. A crack. A blur. The crate door had popped open, loose from the jostling drive. And the lynx, faster than thought, sprang forward. She hit the man with the rifle first, straight to the chest. He went down hard, screaming. The rifle clattered to the ground. The other 2 backed up, stumbling. I raised the shotgun, but didn't need it. She didn't kill, just warned. A flash of teeth. A swipe. One man tripped and fell trying to get away. The other shouted curses, blood on his sleeve. And then she was gone, into the trees. Silent. Wild. Oksana was out of the truck, pulling me back. The men were cursing, scrambling. One limped to the SUV. They were leaving. I stood there, stunned, breath heavy in my chest. I had seen many things in my life, but never that kind of power, that precision. and never on my side. We stood there, breathless. The lynx was gone, but free. Somewhere in the woods, she was running. Maybe watching us. Maybe already disappearing. She saved us, Oksana whispered. I didn't speak. I was still watching the forest. Hours later, I gave a statement. Called Ivan. Called the local news. Reporters came. Authorities. Cameras. Not all believed me, but some did. I told them everything. Not just about the lynx. About the traps. The men. The night visitors. The fear. The silence. The way the forest didn't feel safe anymore. Not because of wolves or weather, but because of people who moved like ghosts and hunted what they shouldn't. The story spread. Some called me brave. Others called me a fool. But it didn't matter. I knew what I was risking. My land, my safety, my quiet life. But I also knew what silence would cost. She walked into my life broken. She left it wild. She reminded me that some things are worth protecting, even when it hurts. Even when it costs you everything. And I would not let her story disappear in the shadows. Not now. Not ever.